All right, guys. Gonna get started. I think I know everybody here, but I'm Kyle, in case I haven't met you. But I think I know everybody, like I said. Tonight, going over testosterone. First thing we're gonna do, sit nice and tall. Just kind of engage your brain a little bit. We're gonna do some eye circles. So when you guys do these, again, if you stare at a screen all day, or most of the day, you get ocular lock. Your eye muscles will actually start to get locked in place, and that causes stress within the body, right? Your body needs to, for survival reasons, be able to see out of the periphery. So we want to re-engage that. So looking straight ahead, I want you to take your eyes, and you're gonna make circles. So not moving your head. You're drawing circles with your eyes. I want you to go 10 one way, 10 the other. One way is probably gonna be harder than the other way. Get 10 each side. This is something you should be practicing daily, again, especially if you're staring at a screen most of the time. Next thing, make sure, again, you're standing or sitting tall. We're gonna do a little Wim Hof breathing, just one round. It's gonna raise your energy. You get more oxygen to the mitochondria when you do this. So what you're gonna do on this, it's gonna be 30 breaths. It's gonna be exaggerated. Once you get to 30, so I'll kind of do it and I'll count. You're gonna exhale on the last one all the way, get everything out. Then we're gonna hold that for 30 seconds. Completely exhale. After that 30 seconds, you'll inhale. We're gonna hold that for 15. That'll be one round, that's all we're gonna do. So just notice how you feel right now. Notice if you feel a difference after we do this. All right, go ahead, begin, 30 breaths. And exhale all the way, and hold that. 30 seconds, I'll tell you when. Resist the urge to breathe in. You're halfway. Got 5 seconds. And nice big inhale. Hold that for 15. And relax. So you should notice the difference in the way you feel. 2 little things you guys can do throughout the day, anytime you need to pick me up, right? To kind of get the brain engaged and get your energy going again. I forgot my adapter, so I'm gonna do this manually with the clicker. So this is actually a video you see from 2012. I got a pretty decent sized scar right there, but before I had it removed, I tried this twice. And I'm always, and the point with this, I'm always experimenting on myself. And I take what I learn through my research, I apply it, and then I teach it, okay? So that was actually a ganglion cyst, we drained it. My wife helped me drain it, and we actually got it to shrink all the way down, but it kept coming back. And when I went to the doctor, finally, the surgeon, because it kept coming back, he said, well, first thing we're gonna try to do is aspirate it. And I was like, it's not gonna work, man, I already tried it twice. But everything I teach you guys is from direct experimentation. So it's called direct knowledge. You can have knowledge, but if you don't apply that to anything, like if I just read about testosterone, but I haven't been using it, we're counseling guys on this for over a decade now, nothing I said will be valid. So everything comes from direct experience. Here's the agenda. Take about 40, 45, 50 minutes, we'll see. Bathrooms if you need them, there's one right here, okay? And there's one in the office on the other side. Hold questions to the end of each section. So there's going to be 3 parts to this. At the end of each section, I'll let you ask any questions that you have. I'm going to go over the myths in the history, because a lot of guys get held up with stuff they've heard through the media, through different sports leagues and all that. We're going to break all that down for you. Going to go over the benefits, and then if it's for you, if it's something you want to do, I'll tell you how to get started with it. Right? So a lot of guys just don't even know where to begin with this. If the brain doesn't have clarity, it's going to shut down. Now this was actually in 2007. So this was when I was a natural bodybuilder. So I had a lot of experience putting muscle on and taking my body to the maximum before I started using testosterone. Competed at a high level in bodybuilding. And I was probably more muscular there than I was once I started using testosterone. So a lot of guys have this conception in their head, they're gonna take it and they're gonna get huge. It's not about that. You're not doing bodybuilder type of doses when you're doing this. It's therapeutic. Mind mapping, you guys have probably heard me talk about before. So there's a certain way that the brain functions. When it doesn't have clarity, it'll stay in freeze mode. It won't take action, right? This will manifest in your life in various areas. In freeze mode, like I can tell, because a lot of guys will say, man, I've been thinking about doing this for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. They don't take action. So I'm gonna give you guys the clarity tonight so you can make that informed decision. And like I said, see if it's for you. See if it's something that you want to do. Jaws, one of my favorite movies. So on average, there's probably more than that, but the research I could find, there's 4 to 5 fatal shark attacks every single year. Right? That might even be on the low end, but that's 4 to 5 that are reported every single year. Is anybody here scared that they're gonna get killed by a shark? Does that cross your mind? It's not a logical fear, right? It's so minuscule, the chances of that happening. Journal of Neuropharmacology. In that 22-year gap, so do that, 22 times 5 with the sharks, 110. 110 fatalities from shark attacks. In that period, deaths that were attributed to anabolics or to testosterone, steroids, all the same thing. People throw these terms around and they say, well, is it anabolic? I'm gonna break all that down for you. But deaths attributed to that, there was less than 5. 5. So this is the safest drug on the planet. This is safer than taking aspirin. It is completely safe. I'll go over any contraindications as we go through it. Incredibly safe though. So if we look at a little bit of the history. So anabolics were kind of developed World War I, World War II, right? In Europe, they started developing these compounds, as far as we know, to help with muscle wasting disease, right? So soldiers, they would give these to soldiers that had terrible accidents, all types of stuff like that. So they've been around for a long time. They've been in sports for a long time. When you guys look at that, okay, 1961, 61 home runs. Who is that? Roger Maris, right? Now, if you look at the 2 years prior, the 2 years after, now I'm not a statistician, but that doesn't make any sense, that he had 61 home runs out of nowhere. Yeah, he was a good home run hitter, but that's a huge jump percentage-wise. Now, I'm not saying that Roger Maris was using stuff, but again, guys in sports have been using this stuff since the 50s. Right? If you look at the Eastern Bloc, you look at the Germans, they've been using it. Guys in pro sports have been using this for a very long time. Now, 95% of pro athletes, from people that I've spoken with at that level of sport, 95% of pro athletes are using anabolics or performance enhancers for recovery purposes. Right? So keep that in mind, because the media tried to vilify these guys. Really, they made a big push with it with McGuire and Sosa back in the summer of '98, when they should be praising them because they saved baseball. If you look at Lance Armstrong, they killed him after he won, 6 or 7 Tour de France's. Probably the most grueling athletic thing you can do. And the guy came back from stage 4 cancer to win 6 or 7 titles. I don't remember how many he had. So instead of saying he cheated, they should be saying, what the hell did he do to recover and become world champ, right? And the testosterone was a big part of that. But again, they're all using. Some guys get caught. So we have to be mindful of, the media has taken it, this moral issue, right? And people have confused that with a health issue. It's two different things. It's two different things. In 1990, it became a Schedule III drug, right? So then it became like a felony to distribute this and whatnot, right? It became classified as a Schedule III drug, 1990. Now, Louis Simmons, I know Toby knows who that is, Louis Simmons. So I got to speak to Louis Simmons 6 or 7 times before he passed a couple of years ago. He was the #1 strength coach of all time, West Side Barbell. There's a great documentary with him and his gym on Netflix. It might still be on Netflix, West Side versus the World. Definitely worth the watch. But this guy was a genius. And he was in that movie Bigger, Faster, Stronger that came out, I think that came out in 2010. And he said something in there that always stuck with me, because it was all about steroids, right? Again, steroids, as people term it, that's testosterone. And you think about how people think of it as two different things. TRT is steroids, guys. Steroids aren't a bad thing. But he said something, and he said, listen, my morals aren't your morals, and your morals aren't my morals. So don't judge what I'm doing. I'm not going to judge what you're doing. So if you go down this path, don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Doesn't matter. I'm very open that I use testosterone because it can help people, right? And it's a game changer for your life. So definitely check out Louis Simmons. Now, one of the big concerns is prostate cancer, right? It's been this myth that if you go on testosterone, you're going to develop prostate cancer. Well, if you actually look at the research, nothing proves that. And there was a specific study Dr. Coward and this Professor Carson did, completely disproved that has any correlation to prostate cancer. I just literally got my blood work today from my doctor. 10 pages of blood work, right? And my testosterone, guys, is off the chart. I'm like a hyper responder to testosterone. But if you look at my PSA score, it was like 0.6. 0.6, guys. And that's the prostate androgens. So that's what I'm telling you guys. I experiment and then I share it with you guys. It's a non-factor. Anybody that says that, and they've actually started showing that when you have too low of testosterone levels, prostate cancer risk goes up. Right? There's a lot of detrimental effects. What's up, Dan? A lot of detrimental effects to having too low of testosterone. So that is not something you have to worry about. Heart attacks. The only concern through all the research is men over 65 or pre-existing heart conditions. It's not going to give you a heart attack, guys. Now, if you fit that category, speak with your cardiologist. Talk to Dr. Andre. He's a member here. He's one of the top cardiologists in the country. Me and him talk about this stuff. So it's a non-factor. Now, I'll go over later in it. There's something we do want you to do. You want to look at hematocrit levels and hemoglobin levels. And you guys got to keep in mind, most doctors, if you go to your general care doctor, they are not versed in this at all. They've heard what the media has said, and they don't want to touch this stuff, most of them. Right? So Tuck was telling me before, right? His doctor, you don't need it. You don't need it. They don't even want to go because they're not educated in it. Very few are. But I'll give you resources at the end, some local doctors that you can go to that'll be open-minded with this. But you want to keep a level on certain numbers, an eye on certain levels, I should say. As far as hemoglobin, hematocrit, we'll go over that, and I'll tell you exactly what to do to make sure that's a non-issue. Because when you take testosterone, the main physical thing that you're going to notice as far as performance is your endurance is going to go up. Because red blood cell production goes up because of the hemoglobin, hematocrit. So your endurance is going to be better. Again, you're not going to get jacked. Your body comp will change a little bit. It's not going to be dramatic, guys. You're not going to turn into Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? The guys at the top level, again, they're using top level numbers. And they're world-class athletes. So you're not going to turn into like a freakish bodybuilder if you go down this road. Now, a big thing with the media was steroids, with testosterone. Anybody know who that is? Lyle Alzado. So that's, what you probably weren't even born yet, were you? No. So I remember as a kid though, this was like the man's man. This dude was a bad dude, right? Very macho. And he developed this certain brain tumor, right? This brain cancer, and he died pretty quickly. He kind of just wasted away. And what he came out and said was it was all the steroid use. That's what he said. And they took that and they ran with it. He became like the poster child. If you do this, this is what's going to happen. Now, I know from being in the bodybuilding world, and bodybuilding is a very weird culture, you learn, you go down a rabbit hole with a lot of stuff. So again, researching stuff like this, does it actually cause this brain cancer? So the scoop on Lyle Alzado, again, being a macho guy, he was actually, according to everything I found, homosexual. He had HIV. The type of brain tumor he had is developed in people that have HIV and AIDS. But he wasn't going to come out and say that. That goes completely against what his character was. He couldn't come out and say he was, if you guys remember him, this was like the toughest dude there was. So he wasn't going to say that. At that time, that was frowned upon. So he came out and said, oh, it was all the steroid use. But steroids don't do that. HIV and AIDS do that. So that's another, I think it's important that you guys understand where a lot of these myths come from. A lot of these myths that are out there. So that's a little bit about the history of it. Any questions on like the history of where this came from in sports? Yeah.
I a more specific question. If say, okay, I want to go get testosterone. Does it go through my regular health insurance?
We're gonna go over that. Okay. Yeah. So questions just on the history of it. They're all derivatives of testosterone. Yeah, they're all derivatives of testosterone. So when you guys go to the doctor, they're not going to prescribe you like D-bol or anything like that. They might give you Deca, like they might get, that would be like the most exotic thing they do. But every person, every guy I've counseled on this says start on a baseline of just straight test, right? There's something called minimum effective dose. Start with the minimum you need to get the results you want, right? Just like caffeine. If you guys have been drinking coffee for years, I remember the first time I had coffee, the buzz that I would get from it. Now I don't feel coffee. So I might have to drink like 3 pots to get a buzz off it. It's a minimum effective dose, and that might increase over time, right? But all those different testosterones, all the different anabolics, they're all derived off testosterone, every single one of them, okay? When we're talking about ones that come from testosterone, there's other performance enhancers you can do. So why would you want to do this? So there was one study I was just reading recently. The average 25-year-old today, okay? The average 25-year-old has the testosterone level of what a 65-year-old would have in the year 2000. So the numbers are dramatically dropping, whether it's from toxins, environmental stuff, sitting in front of a screen all day. Most guys aren't doing tough stuff, right? When you train hard and all that, that hits a primal thing. You can really enhance some of these numbers. But I'll tell you too, a lot of guys will say, well, can I do this naturally? You're not gonna raise your testosterone levels that much naturally. Doesn't happen. I've tried it. The highest I've got mine naturally was 500. So we're gonna go over the norms and all that so you can see where you would wanna fall within that range when you go over this, all right? So 1.25% dip per year after the age of 25. So if you're over 25, which you might be the only one, how old are you?
25.
25, so yeah. I mean, that's when you start getting blood work, right? And you start looking at it. So pregnenolone is a cool thing. There's something called pregnenolone steel, okay? So that could be converted, it's a compound, to testosterone or cortisol. That's the building block of testosterone. To be converted to testosterone, there's 26 steps. To be converted to cortisol, there's only one step. So cortisol is your main stress hormone. So if you guys are not getting enough sleep, you're overly stressed, you're not eating the right stuff, stress is gonna be high, cortisol is gonna be high. You're gonna get this hard, visceral, belly fat type of stuff. Later, guys. So keep that in mind. It's much easier for your body to convert it to the stress hormone than testosterone. So it's called pregnenolone steel. So your body's gonna steal it away from building testosterone, put it towards cortisol. The body prefers the stress response over fornication. That's an easy way to remember that. Right? So the stress response, fight, flight, freeze. So insulin also is a raw material that creates androgens. So you guys know I'm big into fasting. The more insulin resistance you have, the less testosterone you're going to have. Okay? So insulin resistance, what is it? It's eating too often, eating the wrong types of foods, not getting enough sleep. So fasting can, if you were looking at natural ways and or to supplement what you're doing with testosterone, fasting is no brainer. Luteinizing hormone goes up 67%. That's another precursor compound that leads to testosterone. So luteinizing hormone goes up, growth hormone goes up. Fasting actually makes you much more anabolic, the internal environment of your body. So look at these. There's 2 pages of questions. And this is just a quick way you can answer these questions. If you answer yes to any of these, 2 or more, you're probably definitely a candidate to get on testosterone therapy. So read through those. Just kind of do an evaluation in your head. So if you didn't answer yes to any, good for you. But if you did, keep listening. There's a couple things here. Love Garbage Pail Kids. So I had to put that up there. Testosterone, guys, your brain has more androgen and testosterone receptors, your brain and your heart, than anywhere else in your body. The reason I tell you that, if you go down this path and you start, you give it about 3 weeks, you're just going to feel better. It's not a stimulant, nothing like that. You just feel better. One of the guys a couple of years ago at this seminar, somebody said, what does it feel like? And another client that I'd helped kind of get on it, he said, well, let me answer that because I recently started. He goes, life is now in high def. And it was a perfect way to say it. Life is now high def. So when I first started testosterone, it was 2010, I believe. And at that point, I would go typical bodybuilding, so the 10 weeks on, 10 weeks off, that comes from the bodybuilding world. And I was doing that at first, right? And then Devin came with me to my doctor at the time, you know, doing a checkup, and he said, well, why don't we just stay on? He goes, well, let's ask Devin what she thinks. He goes, do you like him better on or off? She goes, definitely on, 100%. And then when we were gonna open this gym, the Flemington gym, I'd come off testosterone. And the reason I came off, Devin wanted to get pregnant again. So it's actually a male birth control, testosterone. I'll go over the feedback loop in a second. It's a male birth control. Again, most doctors, so one of my best friends, when we opened the Hillsborough gym, that facility, 2011, they were having trouble getting pregnant. I said, well, you still doing the test? He's like, yeah. I'm like, your doctor didn't tell you that? He's like, no. And came off the test, rebooted the system, they got pregnant. So that's what I'm telling you guys. A lot of doctors aren't aware of this type of stuff. It has a feedback loop. So you get azoospermia, you stop producing sperm. But there's a feedback loop. But anyway, when I came off of it in 2017, when we opened this, Devin had a miscarriage. And so you guys know starting anything, creating anything from scratch takes a tremendous amount of energy. And she said, you know what, we're gonna table getting pregnant for right now. She said, go back on the test. You need it for what you're doing right now. So it has that dramatic of an effect, right, as far as your energy and your focus. If you look at the norms, so these are different laboratories. Does anything stand out to you guys about those normal ranges?
Huge.
It's huge. So you're gonna go, you'll get blood work, and most doctors will say, okay, you're 300, you're normal, you don't need it. Do not listen to them. You want to be upper limit normal. It's 2 different universes, being low end normal or high end normal. You want to be in that 900, 1,000, 1,200 range. That's where you want to be. So again, they're going to tell you, oh, your test level is normal. Now what will happen then? They're going to say, well, even if we write it, your insurance won't cover it. So like I said, well, I'm not going to do it then. Guys, for a 10-week supply of testosterone, it's going to cost you like $100. That's it. It's cheaper than supplements. Pay for it out of pocket. Pay for it out of pocket. But don't fall for that little trick they do with your normal. You guys want to be optimal. And you guys got to think too with any type of blood work, especially the lower end of that, that's for like your Homer Simpsons. This is what all this stuff is geared towards. You guys want to be supreme and optimal with all this stuff. Your vitamin D levels, everything. You want to have it right there. You want to be at the top of this stuff. Put this one up because I thought it was funny. Anybody watch Curb Your Enthusiasm? This was an episode where Larry had you see his pants? And his wife's friend was sitting next to him and thought he had an erection. And she went and told his wife. He's like, oh, it was my pants. But this is another thing too, right? It could increase libido, right? A lot of times what I've found throughout the years with libido, that's more of a psychological issue, right? So it could enhance libido, but some of the research says it doesn't really do that. But that's a big thing with testosterone, right? It's a male sex hormone. But 99 times, or let's say 90 times out of 100, libido issues have to do with insulin resistance and or psychological issues, meaning you're bored. Okay, there's a saying, novelty is the greatest aphrodisiac. This is why people cheat, right? And that goes with anything. You want a new car, you want new shoes, it's the biggest turn on, right? So there's a good joke I heard years ago, and the guy, he's having trouble getting it up, with his wife. Goes to the doctor, he said, I'm gonna write you a prescription. So he writes it out, gives it to the guy. He goes, that's it? He goes, that's all you gotta do. So next time he's with his wife, getting intimate, he says, I'll be right back. Goes to the bathroom. And he did this a few times now. His wife's like, what is he doing? Every time we're about to have sex, he just disappears, goes to the bathroom. So he leaves the door cracked a little bit. So she goes, and she kind of looks, she sees him in the mirror, and he's got this piece of paper out. And he's going, she is not my wife. She is not my wife. She is not my wife. And it plays into that point of novelty, guys. Novelty. But so something to consider. Now, with this, I figured I'd put a little bit about gaining muscle up there, okay? And you guys will all get the hypertrophy, the muscle growing presentation I did last year. We're going to email that out to you guys where I do like an hour of how to actually put on muscle. Just like with nutrition, with testosterone, people say, I still can't put on muscle. The missing piece is the training. This is how you have to have the stimulus of training to put on muscle. Doesn't matter what you're doing, how much you're eating, if you're on testosterone. So a couple quick things. I know we're not really going over too much training stuff, but the resistance, right? Progressive overload. So it's a stress response when you put on muscle. Your body comes back bigger and stronger to be able to face this attack. So if you're lifting 100 pounds, and at first you start getting bigger, you start getting stronger. If you keep doing that same 100 pounds, guess what? Your body has no more reason to adapt. So then there's a limit, right, on how strong you can get. So then it's, okay, how do I continue to enhance the training? So then we look at time under tension. So if you're training and you really want to put on size, the average set should take between 30 and 70 seconds. That's a long time. That's hard. That's a very hard way to train. 30 to 70 seconds. You go to any gym and you watch a set, most people are done with the set in 15 seconds. So they're never even coming close to that threshold. Again, it's a very hard way to train though. And more insulin sensitive, like I said. So when you guys get more insulin sensitive, and the leaner you are, the more insulin sensitive you become, right? That goes hand in hand. When you're more insulin sensitive and you're training, the training will enhance that too. When you eat, the calorie partitioning or nutrient partitioning, where those calories are going and nutrients are going, is more likely to go to the muscle cell than the fat cell. The average person, they eat, most of it's going to the fat cell, not the muscle cell. Now, if you see like genetically advanced athletes, so when I was at Rutgers the first time, back in 2003, 20 years ago, doing my internship with them, some of these guys that went on to play in the NFL they're physical specimens. Some of them with their shirts off just looked like they could step on a bodybuilding stage. And I would eat with them, right? We would eat, and I would get to see what they would eat. And some of these dudes would put, oatmeal, right? Okay, kind of healthy, stick of butter, half a cup of sugar. And these guys were just shredded. So people that are naturally just ripped all the time, they have much better calorie partition, nutrient partition. They're more insulin sensitive just by the blessing of God. So consider that stuff though when you want to put on muscle. Now with testosterone, it's going to increase the protein synthesis when you're training correctly. So it can help you build muscle. But the levels you guys are going to do, again, it's not going to be these massive doses. Now, some people are more sensitive to androgens, meaning they don't need that much, right? They don't need that much testosterone, and they can respond very well to it. So Ronnie Coleman, who was a six-time, he might have won 8. Yeah, he won 8 Olympias. He didn't have to use that much androgens, according to him. He turned professional as a natural. He's 220 pounds ripped. So some people, right, and as athletes, the more you have to use it is, or the sooner you got to play that card, the less gifted you are. So some guys, right, they have to play it in high school. They're not that good. Some guys got to play it to get from high school to college. Some guys got to get it, start hitting it to get into the pros. Your Hall of Famers, some of those guys can put it off to the backside of their career just to extend their career. And you guys got to think about this too. Even baseball, right? People say, why would a baseball player have to enhance recovery? When you guys are flying, and probably everybody who has been on an airplane, it's an extreme stressor on the body. You're in a tube, basically a metal tube, 35,000 feet up, recycled air. It's incredibly stressful on the nervous system. So you get off, you fly to different time zones, sleeping in different beds, you're not at home. It's very taxing on your body. Then you got to go out and play 3 days in a row. It's impossible to recover and play at that level. NBA guys, and I said this, and then some of them started getting popped. They'll try to brush this under the rug. I'm all for it in pro sports. I want to see the biggest, fastest, strongest person. I think we all do. Yeah, I think everybody does. It's entertainment, right? But when you look at that, it's for recovery. That's why these guys are doing it, so they can perform at that level. Otherwise, they break down. So it increases protein synthesis, which is a good thing. Okay, before we go over how to get started, any questions on that stuff? On ranges or anything?
The ranges you're showing are total testosterone, right?
That's total. So free, I'll go over free too, yeah. So I don't go to, like I can show you my blood work if you want to see it, but free, again, a lot of doctors, you're going to start confusing them. But free is really the one that we want to look at. But when you go to a regular doctor, they're going to look at total. That gives us a good starting point, right? But free is actually what's available for your body to use. That's what's actually out there. So you might have, in some cases, you might have a testosterone of 1,000, but hardly any free testosterone. So your body's not actually able to use it to do the stuff that you want to do with it and to feel better. So where to start? So I just came from, so Dr. Kuda is in Hillsborough. So he was actually going to do the very first testosterone seminar I did. I think it was March 13, 2020. Anybody know that date? Right when COVID started. So he called me in a panic. He said, I can't do it. This is dangerous. We got to stop. We're not doing it. And I said, well, the show must go on. So I did it without him. Right? And we had like 60 dudes there. It was awesome. It was and the next day, everything shut down, pretty much. But he's a good guy. He's a urologist. He's in Hillsborough. And I think he's got a place in East Brunswick as well. So if you go to Dr. Kuda, just tell him you're a friend of mine, client, whatever. When you guys call the doctors, don't try to explain this to the front desk lady. Say, I want to get a checkup. Talk to the doctor, right? Because he'll say, what do you want to do, all this stuff? We don't do that. So when you see him, say, hey, I'm interested in getting on TRT. So he'll do your blood work. He might check your prostate, guys. He's a urologist, and that's not a bad thing to get that checked, especially if you're over 45. So Dr. Kuda's been great with sending people over to him. And then Dr. Jerry, I just came from. So he's the new guy I'm going to. He does a full comprehensive, I have 10 pages of blood work there. I wanted somebody that does really comprehensive, that really understands hormones. So he's at Natural Medicine and Rehabilitation in New Jersey. It's in Somerset. He's awesome though. He just spent an hour with me this afternoon going over all my blood work. He knows his stuff. Like he knows his stuff. So those are 2 resources that I know if you want to get started, you're not going to have any issues with. So if we look at some things you want to look at. Okay, so there you go. Free, total, and SHBG. Does anybody know what that stands for? Sex hormone binding globulin. So if that number's too high, that's going to bind to the free testosterone or the testosterone, and you're not going to, again, be able to use it. So you want to keep an eye on those numbers. Most doctors are just going to test your total testosterone. So on a regular blood panel, when you go for your physical, they're not usually testing testosterone. So So you have to ask for it a lot of the times. But those are numbers. If any of you get blood work, I'm happy to look at it from what I know and kind of give you my analysis, maybe ask different questions when you go in. You want your free to be 2 to 3% of your total testosterone. So if you were 100, right, just to make it simple with the math, we'd look at free being 2 to 3. 1,000 between 20 and 30. Estradiol, E2, right? So this, a lot of guys, not a lot of guys, but people, some guys, right, when testosterone comes up, your body wants to keep a balance. What else is going to come up? Estrogen. You want to keep that in check. Now, you don't want to be on an anti-estrogen like Clomid or tamoxifen. You don't want to be on this stuff long term. Like a lot of guys will just do that the whole time they're using tests. Don't do that. You need estrogen in your body. But you want to keep an eye on that number. So you want that between 25 and 30. So more, again, this is stuff, if you go to like Dr. Jerry, he's going to do all that and more. Like he's 10 pages, guys. Negative feedback loop. It's one of the big concerns. Is it going to shrink my testicles? Potentially. It might. They come back when you come off. I'm not going to tell you how to come off if you wanted to come off. There's no reason, in my opinion, to come off, just like Louis Simmons said. If you want to get pregnant, actually, when we got pregnant with Emma, I went back on, and I was running my post-cycle at the same time when we got pregnant. So I was like, man, I never have to come off again. It's the best. So you have a feedback loop. HPTA, okay, is the hypothalamus pituitary axis. So when you start putting in testosterone outside your body, luteinizing hormone goes down, follicle stimulating hormone goes down, you stop producing sperm. So what happens? Testosterone might atrophy, it might shrink a little bit. Some guys, that's more pronounced. Some guys don't have any issue with that. Right, but that's, as far as like side effects, that's something, if that concerns you, then I'm just telling you how it is. I don't know guys in my circle that's been a big issue. Okay, injectables. I didn't bring, actually might have a needle in the car I can grab for you guys if you want to see it. 3 ml syringe. And a doctor a lot of times will prescribe this stuff for you, right? I know Dr. Kudo, they'll show you, they like to inject it into your quad. I don't like that. I like the delts or the glutes, right? So if you're going to do this, I have plenty of guys throughout the years where the doctor will tell, okay, just go see Kyle and I'll help you with the injections. A lot of guys are scared of needles or whatnot. But if you're going to do the glutes, you do upper outer quadrants. If you cut your butt cheek in 4, the upper outer quadrant, you're going to be perfectly fine. And you would load up. Now, the first time I did a testosterone shot, I didn't know what I was doing. And I shot about like 2.5 cc's of air with the oil into my body. And then I started saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to get an embolism. And me and Devin were dating at the time. I remember I was teaching, and I called my school nurse. She's like, well, let Devin keep an eye on you. Sleep over there. I think you're going to be, I'm thinking all night I was going to drop dead. Like this thing was, so I didn't do that again. So when you do it, right, you want just the oil in there. And then when you inject it, you have to aspirate. Okay, so that means you pull back on the needle. If you draw blood, which I've only seen one time, all the guys have helped with this, one time. Take it out and you put it into a different spot. That means you hit a vessel. Okay, so you always aspirate, just to be safe. Make sure you're not in a blood vessel. If there's blood, pull out, put it into a different spot. And you don't want to do, like people will say, well, can I do oral? Oral is going to beat up your liver. You don't want that. You don't want to do the patch. You don't want to do the cream. You don't want to do the pellets. I know buddies that have done the pellets. They don't work out that well. Do the injectable. It's probably going to be a weekly injection. So supplements you can use that you can add with this stuff. Vitamin D, right, going to help a sperm cell get that going. Vitamin D is going to help. Vitamin D is actually a hormone. That's another thing you guys should always get tested. Every cell in your body has a vitamin D3 receptor. It's called a secosteroid. It's one of the most important things you can look at, vitamin D. So you guys want to be on vitamin D. It's going to help with testosterone levels. The stinging nettle root, that is some, when I get on Amazon, that'll bind with the SHBG, the sex hormone binding globulin. So that's a great thing to get. It's going to bind with that. If your body's producing too much of that, even if you're on testosterone, you're not going to get nearly the full effect of testosterone. So you go on stinging nettle root. Real simple. Simple solution. Okay, so if you wanted to come off, right, the first time I came off, I went off cold turkey. That was not good. Just remember, estrogen is going to raise up to kind of match, keep a certain ratio. If you pull that testosterone in a couple of weeks and you're not producing, but estrogen's up, you're going to turn into a woman, right? So you don't want that to happen. But if you're going to come off, you go on something called HCG. So a lot of baseball players, remember the one that sticks out in my mind was Manny Ramirez. So he got popped with that. So if they were using that, you knew that they were coming off something or whatnot. HCG and Clomid. So I know Dr. Kuda, I'm sure Dr. Jerry Wood, they can prescribe that stuff for you. It reboots your system much quicker. That's actually a female fertility drug. So with like the post-cycle stuff, where I got that from was the bodybuilding world. Bodybuilders, a lot of them are very well versed in this stuff. They know, they've been doing it for a long time, right? And they're doing stuff that they're not doing in the medical community. I saw a presentation in 2005 by Nick Radamus. He's like the leading researcher on testosterone anabolics, college in New Jersey. And he would always say, look, the athletes are always 10 years ahead of the medical community. They're always 10 years ahead of the research, right? And like my favorite baseball player, Barry Bonds, they still haven't caught him. And I hope they don't, right? But he was doing stuff that they couldn't even test for. So I talked to you guys about hematocrit, something I learned from Charles Poliquin, who was a genius. Every quarter, okay, you guys want to go and donate blood if you're going to do this. So I go to 100 medical center right here. I call. They need blood donors all the time. So it benefits them, and I get to thin my blood out, right? And if your hematocrit's too high, they won't even take it. They'll test your hematocrit first. So then if it's high, you'll know, shoot, I got to figure out a way to either come down on my dose, but that's what you want to keep an eye on because that makes your blood a little bit thicker. So if you just go donate blood every quarter, simple solution. Right, again, with Dr. Jerry, he said, do you donate? Because my hemoglobin was in the 15 range, which is great, right? So all these little tricks work, guys. Donate blood every quarter. Any questions? Yeah. I don't like it, man. You got more nerves you can hit there. You got a lot more nerves you can hit there, right? And it's I don't know why they teach that, right? Because everything I ever learned with bodybuilding was delts, glutes. And I've done the quad a few times. I don't find it nearly as enjoyable. But that's my take. You're more likely to, I've heard of guys hitting nerves and they just drop over, man. Not die, but they hit that nerve and their leg goes out.
So it's a weekly injection typically, or is that always the case?
Most times, yeah.
And if you're lower than what you should be, do they bring you in quicker than a week, or do they just wait to the next week to go higher dose?
Well, the doctor will tell you.
Oh, okay.
Like, okay, do half cc every week. Do a cc every week.
Well, you're low, so we need to get dosed up a little higher.
They might, yeah. Most of the time, they're going to start you at like 200 milligrams a week. Like that's a really good spot for people.
Okay.
Most guys don't have to go above that, typically.
How often are you going to Dr. Jerry or whatever?
So I haven't gotten blood work in 4 years, right? And I went to Dr. Kripsak, who's great in Bridgewater. But then I've been looking for somebody that can do, that I can just rely on. Okay, start going twice a year. So I'm going to start going every 6 months just to get a snapshot. I wanted to make sure certain things were okay. And you guys should all be getting regular blood work. I know but now I'm 42 and I'm like, all right, I've got 3 little kids. I better just see what's going on inside my body. Make sure there's no red flags.
So do you see him like more often in the beginning to get you?
No, like I'll go see, like my wife doesn't have to go see him again for a year. I'll go see him in 6 months. So I've had, since I was a teenager, my kidneys have had issues. So I got to keep an eye on that. Right, I got to keep an eye and make sure that they're functioning properly. So I'll go more frequently, see if little tweaks that I make enhance the function. But at least yearly I would go.
Does the take more than you started with for it to be effective?
Not really, not really. If you were trying to maybe put on, like, if the putting on mass was your main, then you might run into that. But as far as the mental acuity and all that, I haven't found that to wear off at all. You know.
Maybe back to the myths of when we started, we heard a lot about abuse of steroids, right? Guys that used it, created kidney issues, whatever it might have been, liver issues. Is that possible with testosterone, TRT, or should it always be under doctor's supervision?
No, I'll be honest with you. Like, Dr. Jerry didn't prescribe my stuff. I get my own stuff. Because I try to stay as far away from the medical, you know, being in the system as I can. But, you know, I can tell. I do my blood pressure at home, right? So that's something you want to keep an eye on with hematocrit and hemoglobin. So if you wanted to go that route, there's ways you could go that route. But if he's going to prescribe it, most guys feel more comfortable going that way, right? They're more, getting a prescription and going to the pharmacy and doing it.
You don't do that. You go
Yeah, I don't do that myself.
Mexico?
I don't go down there, but I order, yeah. Yeah, there's, this stuff is not as hard to get as you would think, right? It's really not. And I've got some good resources, you know, where we've had it tested and all that in labs, make sure it's pure, make sure it's good. So you got to make that decision yourself. Hey, do I want to go this way or this way?
I mean, the NBA, you know, like how they're not really mass monsters like NFL players, MMA fighters, and the rest of them. Would the steroids they would take or like performance-enhancing drugs be more like EPO?
That's more your endurance athletes. Erythropoietin, yeah. So that's what you'd see in like Tour de France,
Yeah.
right? That type of stuff.
I mean, I thought like basketball is also some endurance too. For
It is, but yeah, I don't think any of those guys are using that I know of.
what do they use in the NBA?
NBA, they're probably just, well, always do a baseline of test, right? And then if you look at stuff like, so my first knee, when I wrote, just both of my knees were mangled at one point. I was at 72 degrees range of motion 4 months into it. So I didn't think I was going to get full use of my leg back. And it was scary. And then Louis Simmons told me, so you know, check out EQ, equipoise, right? So again, these are all derivatives of testosterone. So I started doing research because testosterone could degrade collagen synthesis. It's really if you're using above 200 milligrams, right, of that, it could start, the muscles will outgrow the tendons and ligaments. That's where you see a lot of ruptures. At the time when I did my first patellar tendon, I was using 200 milligrams a week. So I'm like, I don't know if that's what it was, but nonetheless, started doing research. So you have DECA, Primo, and EQ will enhance collagen synthesis. So EQ will increase collagen synthesis by up to 300%. So when I started using that back then with that first knee injury, I started getting back 10 degrees a week after that.
Okay, I guess that's more important than the NBA because all that running and pounding on the court.
You got to look. There was you can find a YouTube video. The one dude, he was at a lab or whatever, and it was basically LeBron's stack, right? And it was labeled with his initials, and they couldn't prove that it was his. But you think about LeBron, guy's physical specimen, but he was never injured. That's unheard of. You cannot play at that level with, especially basketball, and recover.
He's got quite a physique.
But he was one of the best athletes of all time. But I'm saying, like, even a guy like that, and you know, obviously they're not going to come out and say it, right? But this is when a lot of the athletes, like 10 years ago, were going to Europe, and they were saying they were going for like PRP and stuff. They weren't going for PRP. They were going for stuff like EQ to help the tendons and ligaments heal.
Health insurance does it cover any of this?
If you're in that normal range, probably not. They're probably going to say no. But again, it's not. You're looking at it. If you go to the doctor, it's been a while since I've gone to the doctor for, but 100. I've got it as low as $58 before for 10 weeks. So it's incredibly cost effective. And that's not per shot, that's per 10 weeks.
If you have to get it from a doctor, would the best case scenario be like a doctor that lifts or a doctor that...
Ideally. So this dude, Dr. Jerry, he's really into lifting. Like he's into lifting, he uses testosterone himself.
Yeah.
He does 100 milligrams a week. So I always like if I have to go to a doctor, that's somebody that's into fitness, that understands.
Yeah, like anabolic doctor, you know.
Yeah, Anabolic Doc's great, yeah. That's another good resource on YouTube, Anabolic Doc. It's got tons of videos on this stuff. Yeah.
So just, I'm not quite sure, if you're in a normal testing range of testosterone, the doctor, is he gonna try to get you to a certain point that's more healthy to you, or?
A good doctor should try to get you to upper limit normal.
Oh, yeah, so it'll increase, okay.
Yeah. If you're 300,
It's not good then, right?
yeah, try to get that up to 1,000.
Yeah.
Right? That's,
A goal to get to.
yeah. In all the years when I've been helping guys with this and looking at blood work, there was 2 guys that had upper limit normal natural levels. 2. That's out of over 100 throughout the years that I've looked at as far as blood work. 2 guys. So the odds are that you're not going to be naturally upper limit normal. If you are, that's great.
Dwayne, he's in the Rock, Dwayne.
Oh, the Rock's on a ton of stuff, dude.
Of course.
Come on, man.
Hardest worker in the room.
Yeah. Yeah. But this is the thing. A lot of these guys using it, they're working harder than anybody. It's like Louis Simmons. These guys are training harder than anybody. Yeah. It's not to take anything away from them, but like anybody, they couldn't tell the Liver King was on stuff. I mean, it's silly, you know, but he's a character, you know, it's his physique.
Didn't his gut give that away?
That's probably from GH. That's probably from GH, higher levels of GH. What else we got, guys? Any other questions?
Regardless, the Rock still has crazy genetics.
They're advertising a lot of the supplements on TV, that Frank Thomas, what's that, Eugenics?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't seen it. I mean, I know there's Tungat Ali you could take as well. I've never seen that stuff pan out. Like DHEA, you probably want to try. I'm probably going to get on that. My DHEA was a little on the lower side when I got it, and that kind of, it's a building block. That one has some credence. Like that was that's what Androstenedione turned into Androstenedione. Remember Mark McGuire, and then testosterone. But most of the other stuff out there,
What was it called again? What you just said?
DHEA,
D.
HEA. But I think you're just going to spin your wheels if you go down that road, from what I've seen. You know, maybe it works for some guys, but I'd rather just, if you're going to do it. Plus, with that stuff, right, like back in the day with GNC, when you're taking pro hormones, again, your liver has to detoxify this. I'd rather do an injectable. It bypasses the liver.
Yeah, that's true.
Way safer on the liver.
I mean, do they still sell pro hormones?
Yeah, I mean, the supplement industry is largely unregulated. So you can get, you know, certain
Because
things.
I think you talk, pro hormones are basically oral steroids, right?
For the most,
And
yeah,
you
if you,
said your
yeah,
opinion on them.
yeah, you don't want to do oral steroids.
And also, what's your opinion on SARMs?
I don't know much about them. I haven't used them myself. So he's talking about like androgen receptors, selective androgen receptors. People like them. People like the peptides. But again, I always go back.
Substitute steroids without the negative side effects. That's what they say.
But there's so little negative side effects, like with steroids.
That's what
They say. I know that. That's what they say.
Yeah, not just that.
I mean, I had one of my buddies, a high-level strength coach, was just texting me about, you know, the peptides. Should he get on that? And so, what's the goal? I want to put on muscle. I said, well, always start with your test. Start with that before you start. Like a lot of guys just have this block of getting on testosterone because all this stuff that they've heard, right? And they don't want to do it or whatever. They think that it's, I don't want to take steroids. And listen, with steroids, catabolic steroids, they hand out like candy. Prednisone, cortisone, this type of stuff. That is far more harmful on your system than anabolic, right? But there's no issue with that.
All this crap the media says about testosterone, like you've done your research, you know, you do it personally.
Yeah.
It's a shame that more people don't get the real information.
Yeah, you always got to
It's
dig.
sad, actually.
Yeah, you always got to dig and do your own research. What else we got, guys?
Are bodybuilders, like, are they on, like, they're on more than test, right?
Yeah, so they'll be doing tests, and they might be doing, again, all derivatives of testosterone, as far as like Anavar. There's so many different things. Primabone, Deca. Then they'll start stacking. Then they go on growth hormone. What you don't want to mess with, like a lot of these guys to get bigger will use insulin, which is dangerous. Yeah, because insulin's actually the most anabolic hormone in the body. Right, it's the most anabolic hormone. So I wouldn't be messing with any of that. But again, growth hormone. You got Michael Lockett. If you guys can look up this dude, he guest posed at my show in 2007. And he won the Team Universe the year before, which was the #1 natural contest in the world. And everybody's coming out and says, there's no way this guy's natural. But I knew from look, I said, there's something very unique. I've seen a lot of guys that were juiced out of their gills, and they have a different look. This guy looked completely differently. Got to meet him in person. And then I started floating around the idea. I said, I think this dude has a myostatin deficiency. So we all have something called myostatin. So if you look at Belgian blue cattle, okay? So Belgian blue cattle don't have myostatin. There's been certain babies they found that don't have this gene. Myostatin inhibits muscle growth, right? It's like a safety mechanism. But this guy, Michael Lockett, and there's been others, I'm sure they're manipulating this now, that have been born without it. And it's just uncontrolled muscle growth. It looks very strange. It does not look like somebody else. It's complete. I'll send you a picture. It looks unbelievable. To see this dude in person was like, he literally looked like a Ninja Turtle. That's what he looked like. Michael Lockett.
Oh, I almost thought you said Michael Hearn.
No, Michael Hearn. And if you look at the Belgian blue cattle, they don't. That's a type of cattle that don't have that gene. So people are manipulating that too and using blockers. They were saying that was going to be out by the 2008 Beijing Olympics. They were going to be doing that. So you could get like, I don't know what, some of these guys are using stuff I've never even heard of before. But those are the main ones.
What level are they at? Like, testosterone's got chest.
I don't know. I mean, even when you had the guy, you want to remember Greg Valentine. He had the world's biggest arms. Yeah, and he was using, yeah, well, he was using Synthol too, but they did a special on him. He was using like 4,000 milligrams a week of test. And then they did his blood work and everything. When he came off, everything was fine. 4,000 milligrams a week. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, it's a ton. You know, and he was on it for years. So it was further to dispel some of the myths. What else we got, guys?
Do you do any like vitamin, like micronutrient testing or anything like that?
Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he looked at all, you can look through it. He looked at all the stuff, you know, your sodium, potassium, your D. He looked at insulin, HB1AC. Yeah.
I'm saying well, obviously vitamin D, but like A, E.
He looked at B. B was a big one, folate.
Okay.
Yeah, so that B12, B9. So it was pretty good, yeah. He's good, man.
So a lack of vitamin D, living in New Jersey, we're not getting a lot of sunshine.
Correct.
Do we have to double in? Do you know what level I should be taking?
I like to start people, we used to dose it different, but 10,000 IUs a day.
I take two, I gotta measure what they.
You got to look and see what it is.
All right.
Yeah, because most people take like 2,000 IUs. That's not going to do anything.
No.
You know, and then you can back off with that. And you're not getting, vitamin D is like a fat-soluble vitamin. So you can say you could you develop toxicity. You're not going to develop vitamin D toxicity. That doesn't exist. If you ate like pounds of liver, you might be able to do that, but it's not going to happen. So try to get even that. You want to be upper limit normal.
Live in like Florida or something.
Even then, because if you put on sunscreen, sunblock, sunglasses, it's blocking the production. It's very hard to get it naturally. But you want it, anytime you guys can get sunlight, get it. And you could even stare at the sun with your eyes closed. That'll help because it has to enter through the eye, yeah.
How's vitamin D absorption when you do it with food or without food?
What's the question?
Vitamin D absorption, I heard it's better when you do it with like fat or something.
Yeah, it could be. It's fat soluble. We got fat in our body, so I don't really concern with that. Like I'll do it when I'm fasting.
Because someone told me, yeah, well, same, but
Yeah.
someone told me it's like, oh, like you're just peeing out the rest.
No,
Whatever.
I don't believe that. I just got my vitamin D. I was 108. Right? That's the top of the norm that you can be at. Anything else, guys? So I think, Evan, you have all their emails, right? So we'll be blasting out that muscle camp presentation. That goes real deep into how to put on muscle and the science behind it. It's always good to educate yourself on that. If you guys decide to do this, just feel free to reach out to me. That's my cell phone number right there. Okay, just hit me up. And just to plant the seed, we got RIP Dads coming in October for anybody who wants to do it. It's a 6-week dads program. We do everything. You're doing your training. You're doing all the stuff with us. You're doing your fasting. You're doing the Panda method. All that cool stuff. And I usually teach a couple lessons throughout that. So that'll be in October. So just keep an eye out. And the emails from the gym or Facebook, you'll see it. That's pretty awesome contest. A lot of the guys here have done that. All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate you. Cool.